Here we are on this beautiful Sunday lunchtime. We're going to have some Bordeaux blend from Washington State. This is from the Red Mountain AVA, Eastern Washington State. It's a very interesting part of the state. That mountain itself is it goes up from the southeast to the northwest, and a very interesting exposure. Some parts of it, they say, get 2 hours more sun a day during the growing season than parts of Napa. So very interesting from that point of view. It's kind of like a desert, even though it's an elevation a few hundred feet. It's a desert climate. It's very hot during the day, but it's cool at night. And it's got the wind, the air coming from the two rivers, the Yakima and the Columbia rivers, that really cool it down. So it maintains acidity. It really works very well for these wines. They do need some irrigation, but a lot of places on the West Coast do. So very, very well known now. I mean, this is an area that grew over the last 30, 40 years, as we discussed before. It's got some really very well-known vineyards that people buy grapes from, like Quintessence, Vineyard, Obelisco, Clipson, Kiona. Some of these names you may have heard. And it's still a lot of winemaking goes on from people who buy these grapes and make their own wine, which is the case of Mark Ryan here. This is a Mark Ryan Water Witch Bordeaux mix from 2016. He called it Water Witch because his grandfather in the area used to be a water witch, somebody who went around looking for water to dig wells. So he's got this connection. All his wine names are a connection to something that he experienced, which is of course very interesting. He started making wine. He's 20 years ago, he says. So it was really, before that he was in the wine business. He's sort of a little bit of a self-learner. So he tried a lot of different things. He got really lucky in the beginning by having access to some very good fruit. And that's like we saw we talked about this, I think, for around a little bit. If you do start with that, you really have a leg up. And you can start producing good wine, you can get known, and you can have access to more fruit. People want to sell their fruit to you because they know you're going to do something good with it. This is from the Quintessence Vineyard. According to Mark, it's really the only vineyard where he's got pretty much full control over the planting, even though he doesn't own it, the growing, the pruning. So it's as close as you're going to get to an estate wine. We tasted it when we were there in Seattle a couple of years ago. There's an area right outside of Seattle called Woodinville. It's a very close suburb where you have all these tasting rooms from all the Washington growers and makers. So you don't have to travel 200 miles east. And it's really a lot of fun. You can spend a couple of days going around tasting all these different wines and picking what you like for future reference. And anyway, I remember this struck me when I tasted it. So I got a few bottles, and now we're going to see how it's doing. Although ideally, I think you could wait a few more years, but hey, we can't always wait. Anyway, on the color, it's very dark. It's got a little bit of that purple, which is, sometimes you see in the northern Rhone Syrah, but still the color is primarily red, so more Bordeaux. It's pretty alcoholic, as you can imagine. On the nose, what struck me then and still struck me is the camphor. It's really strong. Not just ethanol alcohol, it's that camphor, that sort of mix of glycerine and alcohol, maybe almost like a pharmacy-like smell, which I find fascinating. I keep going back for more. Maybe I'm getting high on this. And the usual red fruit that you will have in a Cabernet. This is a Cabernet mix, so it's about 60% Cabernet, 27% Merlot, a bit of Cabernet Franc, and the 1% proverbial Petit Verdot, which does make a difference, definitely, according to Mark. Yeah, the color, the fruit comes up more now that once you stir it a little bit. And then also you got a little bit of that tighter finish on the nose. Maybe a little bit of leather, a little bit of earthiness. I just detect a tiny bit of sort of like a cocoa powder, maybe that bitterness, mocha, chocolate, cocoa powder. A little powdery on top of the bitterness. Let's see what we have. Mm. Mm. The palate is just great. It really fills your mouth. The attack is progressive. It doesn't really hit you. And then the finish is very long. And then the cherry pops up again on the finish. It, again, with that glycerine, and so it's a very interesting mix. It's just very, very good. I mean, it's not your typical just 100% Cabernet from Washington State like we've had before, which is really much more exuberant, joyful, colorful fruit. This has some of that, but it's got a little bit of that restraint that you get from the Bordeaux blend, I think the Merlot and the Petit Verdot and the Cabernet Franc, to create a structure that's, I think, is going to last a lot longer. It's not going to necessarily get better, but it's going to last. You're going to be able to keep it, and it's going to go through different phases of taste, all very good because it's very good right now. I don't think it's shutting down, and maybe it did shut down a couple of years ago. It does spend 20 months in oak, so when it's and a couple of years after, you need to wait a couple of years until to drink it after it comes out. But it's really delightful. Anyway, 2018s are coming out. I'm gonna buy some more, even though it's expensive. It's still cheaper than a regular Bordeaux, and it's got really a different charisma to it. Cheers.